How you doing, guys? I think there's one thing all of us have done at one time or another, and that was burn bridges. Now, for the most part, the bridges you burn behind you are irreparable. And on the rare occasion you can repair damage done, relationships are never quite the same. This is something that Watchtower counts on being able to do, especially for those of us who came into the organization from the outside, was to convince us that everybody outside the organization was an evildoer. And usually the first scripture we heard of was 1 Corinthians 15:33. Bad association spoils useful habits. So from the get-go, they will convince you that everybody outside the organization is bad association. Which really, are they really? This was when I started studying. Now, my situation was kind of funny. I felt obliged to fulfill my obligations and continue the study, basically because I went out and I sought them. The funny thing was, all the red flags were presented right in front of me. I saw them all. There were a lot of things that turned me the wrong way. And one of the first things that they tried to convince me that everybody outside of the organization was bad association. They pushed that to the hilt. From the get-go, I knew that wasn't quite the case. In the course of a week, I talked to a lot of people. I have a lot of acquaintances. But very few do I actually consider friends. And I'm still the same way today. Very few people I have on that friends list. And the one thing they tried, I had some close friends at that time, they did whatever they could to get me to cut ties with them. And I was never very secretive about it because I wasn't about to do that. But they would tell me, they're not Jehovah's people. And on a spiritual level, some of them were far superior spiritually than any of Jehovah's Witnesses were. Well, as time went on, I put up with their bull. But I started realizing one thing. Now, let's face it, on my last video, I was talking about closed doors. And Jehovah's Witnesses, when they leave the organization, basically have nowhere to run because of the way they're being set up. And it's not like they force it. It's not like they're holding a gun to your head and telling you not to go. No, everything is voluntary. But what they're doing is they're getting you to cut ties. They're getting you to close off all these roads so that you have nowhere to go if you do leave except right back into the organization. As time went on, I realized after I got baptized that I had seriously compromised myself. I had lost my job just before I got baptized. And to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses, I compromised myself seriously. The one job I was offered in a 6-month period would have required that I carry an M16. Being one of Jehovah's Witnesses, I obviously couldn't take that job. Looking back, I probably just should have kept it to myself and taken the job. I would have been sitting pretty right now. But over the next few years, I realized how compromised I was. I was always very good at handling finances, except the time I was in the organization, because I had compromised myself. It wasn't their doing, but I let them coerce me into doing it to where I pretty much had nowhere to go. And this is basically why they wanted me to cut ties with everybody I knew outside the organization. Let's face it, we all need uplifting people in our lives. Somebody for moral support, somebody for decent conversation, but they wanted that exclusive. And in all honesty, as far as having any moral support, as far as having any decent conversation, the majority of that was from people on the outside of the organization, and they couldn't have it. I never made it any secret that I had friends outside the organization, and I wasn't about to cut ties with them. So for a while, they kind of backed off. They realized that they pushed too hard, that I would just pack up and go. The jerkball weenie who gave me my Bible study, he was very aggressive, very pushy. And this guy has probably run more people out of the organization, study-wise, than anybody on record, which is actually a good thing. But like I said, I felt obligated to fulfill my study and continue on because I went out looking for them. And the funny thing was, everything was laid in my lap. One time during a study, he said to me, if somebody stops studying, I have no use to talk to them afterwards. So pretty much right there, he's telling me that friendship in the organization comes with conditions. I recognized it for what it was, but in all honesty, I said very little about me personally, but I just kind of absorbed all this. Talking to a few people in the organization, they get, oh no, he's wrong, don't worry about it, he's a very rare case. But everything he did, although they wouldn't admit it, was condoned. Yes, they do spy on you. Yes, they do pry into your personal business. He basically epitomized what Watchtower is. As time went on, I started realizing that financially, I'm struggling. And I was looking at the decade prior to my being in the organization. Let's face it, we all go through bad times. We all go through good times. But myself, when I'm going through bad times, I always want to get to the next chapter. I always look ahead to other times ahead to grab hold of. Okay, I'm not going to be in this situation forever. While I was in the organization, it didn't appear that there was anything to grab hold of, because we all know how the teachings of the Kingdom Hall were very redundant, very repetitious. And I was looking at my own personal life really sliding downhill, but that's kind of where they wanted me, so that I would be beholden to them. And this is the way everyone who comes in from the outside is. I'm guessing it's easier to do it from the born-ins because they get them from birth to think that way. But when you come in from the outside, see, with me, they assume that people come into the organization, which I want to do in a future video, is coming in because they have a miserable life. They didn't know a whole lot about me, and I didn't reveal too much, but that wasn't the case with me, because my life was actually pretty happy when I came in, and I honestly didn't think it was going to change when I became one of Jehovah's Witnesses, which, yes, it did drastically. There just came a day when I realized that I'm going nowhere in this organization, and I started realizing that my spirituality was dead. I was nowhere near as spiritual then than I was before I came into the organization. The other thing that got to me was the smile had left my face. They would prefer that I put on that pasted Kingdom Hall smile, which, no, if there's nothing to smile at, I don't believe in putting on a fake smile. But I realized that I was not happy in the organization. Now, like anything else in my life, if I was miserable with something, I would move on. I would have no problem with that. But they started recognizing this when I started fading, that things weren't quite the same. You know how it is when they try to get, it's just that you're in Satan's world and he doesn't want you in the organization. No, it wasn't that Satan didn't want me in the organization. I recognized that I did not want to be in the organization. Everything was just too redundant, and it was too critical. Everyone was critical of everybody outside the organization. They were very critical about other people in the hall. And everywhere I've gone in my life, I've always been able to bond with someone or a certain situation. But I recognized pretty quickly that it wasn't happening there. And this is why I'm glad I never closed doors on people I knew outside the organization. Funny thing was, when it was finally realized that there was no way they were going to get me back, they closed that door. The people that I associated with prior to my going in are still there. And Jehovah's Witnesses for the past 3 years pretty much have been an extinct species that I don't see, except for that ridiculous visit I got about 3 months ago. And my reaction was not what they were looking for. And Rosalie spilled it when she said, well, at least somebody's thinking about you. She was hoping that I would think that nobody outside the organization could possibly think about me. And they were hoping to hear how miserable my life was since I left. But they didn't get that. So they weren't there for about 2 minutes before they left. But this is what they were hoping. And kind of find out through conversation that Jehovah's Witnesses have been visiting a lot of the people that have left. Because the unfortunate thing is, a lot of people that even though they have left the organization, some have found other roads out and they're doing very well. Others left prematurely and still have nowhere to go. They've left the organization and they're running in circles. Watchtower recognizes this. For the most part, people that leave, there are going to be some that are going to, you're right about the outside world. It's a horrible place. And yes, it can be if you make it that way. But Watchtower, although they don't do it, they want you to close off all these other roads so that you run in a complete circle and come right back and believe that they're God's only true organization, which is the technical word for it is bullshit. But this is what they're hoping. Like I said, I'm looking at the 10 years that prior to my being in the organization, and I'm looking at the years since I've left. Definitely much happier before and after. And as far as financially secure, I'm doing a lot better financially since I left, as I was before the organization. Like I said, we all go through ups and downs. But unfortunately, when you got the stigmatism of a Watchtower ankle bracelet on, hooked to a chain, you don't have very many options. And this is what Watchtower wants. They want you to be totally beholden to them. But once you cut that chain and let go and realize that they have no real power, then all these other roads are open up to you. No, bad association spoils useful habits. That is very true. But keep in mind that there are also bad associations within that organization. Anyways, guys, I will talk to you soon. You guys have a good day.